On today's episode of the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast, we'll hear from Matthew Bellows, a serial entrepreneur with a track record of founding and selling 3 companies before stepping into the venture capital arena. What sets Matthew apart in my mind is his commitment to a deep meditation practice, which gives him a distinct insight into achieving success with mindfulness. Join us as Matthew unveils the genuine and unvarnished story of creating, building, and selling his companies, his evolution as a leader and CEO, and his relentless pursuit of innovation. He also shares crucial guidance for early-stage founders on navigating the entrepreneurial landscape and avoiding risks that could kill your business. I hope you enjoy this episode of the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast with Matthew Bellows. Matthew Bellows, pleasure to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast.
Great to see you, Alex. It's been too long.
It's been a long time. Yeah. Now, you have a tremendous history as an entrepreneur. I know for a fact that you have started and then sold 3 different companies. It's been a big part of your life for the last 20 years to be an entrepreneur and be a CEO, be a leader. We want to get into the stories behind those companies. But before we do so, out of curiosity, where does your spark to be an entrepreneur come from? Like, what were the motivators? What were the drivers? Where did you find that inner energy to say, I want to start companies? This is what I want to do with my life and career.
Yeah, I didn't think that growing up. I did not grow up in a business family. I kind of thought business was boring, working for the man stuck in a cubicle somewhere. Like, it did not seem like very interesting to me. But then 2 things happened that flipped the switch. One is I needed to get a job. And I decided I'm not going to work in the restaurant industry anymore. I worked in the restaurant industry for high school, college, and after college. And at some point I moved back east to Cambridge, where I am now. And I was like, not going to do it. So needed to get a job. I cold called all of the software companies that were within a bike ride of my house. And I got a job at a software company, and I helped them build an education program to train engineers and their customers on how to use their technology. This was over the telephone speech recognition technology back in 1995, 96.
Okay.
So this was a long time ago. But the thing is that, like, the thing that sparked it was like, I remember setting up the classroom for the first time and knowing that 25, 30 really smart people were coming to my classroom the next day to learn about this groundbreaking revolutionary technology. And it was just so creative. It was so fun and so interesting and so rewarding to like make something that had never existed before. And then that sort of reset my whole thing about business. I was like, oh, actually, this is a creative process. This is not just a droning kind of do your job, climb the ladder process. So that really helped.
So feeling like you're birthing something, feeling like you're bringing something to life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know how it is. Like, you have this insight that this might be a thing, and then you pursue that idea to discover if it could be. But then the other thing that sparked my interest in entrepreneurship is that I realized, after many years of working those kind of jobs, was that like I needed to find some activity, professional activity, that would have potential for asymmetric returns on my time. In other words, just working for what amounts to an hourly wage, even if it's a very good hourly wage, it has linear returns on your time, and your time is the only thing you've actually got in your life. And so, like, what would be the things that I could do that would potentially sort of break that linear curve into an exponential curve? So those were the 2 inspirations.
That's pretty advanced thinking for way early in your career. So you were basically saying, I don't want to have a job where I'm getting paid by the hour to do whatever it is. I want a place where I can put my time and energy and then hopefully have some arbitrage on that, or you're calling it asymmetric return.
My first boss at that company said, we need to go to 24/7, 365 customer support. I was in the customer support training group. I love this guy. He gave me a break, and I'll never forget. Mark Schlepphorst. Thank you, Mark. But he drew this chart of like hours and days and weeks and coverage of the people on the team. And I was like, dude, it doesn't work that way. The 22nd and the 23rd hour in the day is more expensive for all of us than the first or 10th or even 12th. And he disagreed, of course.
He had
I'm clear on my opinion of that conversation.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is what a lot of entrepreneurs do. They do it for creativity. They do it because they see an opportunity. They do it for freedom. They do it because they see, the potential for really big impact. So you've since started 3 companies, and you've got a really great batting average when it comes to the outcome that a lot of entrepreneurs are looking for, which is selling their company. I believe the first one was in games. The second was turned into sales productivity, which is Yesware. And then the third one was financial awareness and planning, which is Bodeswell. Walk us through those companies and what they were doing and kind of the progression through those.
Well, I mean, in a nutshell, it's sort of my life's professional story, so I could go on for a while. But just briefly, the first one was a bet that people would play video games on their cell phones, which in 1992, 93 was somewhat of a stretch. Even my mom was like, that's a stupid idea. But I was pretty convinced that computers plus networks equals games. And so my co-founder and I started a media company, because media companies are very cheap to start. You can start it on your own without any outside capital, that would cover this emerging disruptive force in the video game industry. And our basic bet was this could be, sort of innovator's dilemma, disruptive force. And it turned out to be true. And we very quickly became sort of meeting place for this nascent industry, and got to know a ton of amazing people and built a little media empire of our own, and then sold that company to CNET at the time, which was, ran GameSpot and others, is now CBS Interactive.
Nice.
That was a bootstrap company that we exited successfully and, had almost no outside capital for.
And so how long was that process? How long from when you started to when you sold to CNET?
4 years.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So then you're like, okay, great. I've got a feather in my cap. You're now bitten by the entrepreneurial bug and you want to go do this again, or then what happened?
Then we had twins. My wife and I had twins, and that curtailed my entrepreneurial activities significantly for a number of years. It was kind of all absorbing activity for a couple of years. So I worked for other people, other companies for a little while. And then I was a VP of sales at a venture-backed company called Vivox. And we made voice over IP services for online games and virtual worlds. Totally incredible technology, great team. Benchmark was invested in the company, so really good backing. But every quarter I had to stand up in front of the board and I had to give them my 30, 60, 90-day pipeline. And every quarter I got it wrong. Just like, how can you know? We have like 10 big deals that may or may not close in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And it was so frustrating to me because that's, for a small company doing big deals, that's really a problem for planning, for execution, for fundraising, for everything. And so I was like, where's the data that would help me make this pipeline better? And all the data is in your email. And so we started Yesware with the idea of improving email for salespeople, and then gathering the data from their activity so that sales managers and VPs and CEOs could plan their pipeline better.
Yesware was a big deal. I mean, I remember using Yesware. It was amazing to be able to track and see who opened and who did what with the email and what was happening. It's a great indicator of activity. So that was a big deal product. And this was before the whole boom around sales enablement and sales operations and stuff like that, right? Or was that just before the wave?
It was really one of the pioneering companies in both sales enablement and also in product-led growth companies. I mean, we distributed our product through a free demo, which now is like common practice, but at the time was, kind of a different approach, more like the video games that I had seen my whole life growing up. So yeah, we definitely made some incredible kind of innovations in the environment, and we raised a bunch of money. That's how we met,
Yep.
from raising money from Foundry Group, and all those years ago. So yeah, it was off to a great start. Let's just say.
And so let's dig into the story of Yesware. So Yesware had a very strong premise, very strong foundation. You founded the company. You've got background, so you have the product founder fit or the founder market fit, and so you're there doing it. Tons of stuff is happening. What's it like to build a company that's growing that fast? How was your leadership changing? What did it mean to you as a CEO?
Well, it was 8+ years of being a CEO of a venture-backed company. We raised a total of $50 million. We grew it to about 15 million. I grew it to about $12-15 million of annual recurring revenue, and it was incredibly difficult. Let's just say. I mean, it was fun in a lot of ways and interesting, and it was incredibly rewarding to impact that many people's professional life. We had 60,000 users, daily active users. We had big contracts with some of the biggest, hottest companies in the world, including Salesforce and Box and AdRoll and Groupon and many others. So it was incredibly exciting. But, I think any of us who are on that team will look back and think we didn't get the outcome that we wanted, because we didn't actually end up going public. We didn't actually end up creating a world-beating company like we hoped to.
You didn't get the outcome you wanted. You still built a meaningful company.
Yeah.
What happened to you as you were going through this? So what were your kind of break points as a CEO? How did you deal with the stress? How did you deal with the ups and downs and ins and outs? Because we all know it's super hard to get off the ground. And then once you're off the ground, you're at $12 million in annual revenue. You've got a lot of expectations. You got a lot of stuff happening. That was taking a toll on you. What are you doing to protect yourself as a CEO? What are you doing to maintain resilience throughout the journey?
Well, luckily, I have had a meditation practice for the last 30 years. So I was I left Brown University and went to a college called Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. You know it well.
I certainly do. Yep.
And so I graduated from Naropa with a degree in Buddhist and Western comparative psychology and a minor in Buddhist studies. But really what I graduated with was a sitting meditation practice. And so that, I think if I hadn't found that tool and used that tool throughout this entire thing, including, the first startup and having twins and all the different life challenges, but especially Yesware, like I would be a different person, and I'm not sure it would be a pretty sight. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a perfect guy in any stretch of the imagination. I have all kinds of flaws and bad habits, etc. And so sitting meditation for me provided a foundation to kind of weather the storms that came. The storms absolutely came. There was no dodging the difficulties of going through that kind of process. But at least I felt like, for the most part, I had a ground. And when I lost my ground, when I lost my foundation, I had a place to come back to. And for me, that was a sitting meditation practice. Also, exercise is very important to me. Physical training of some kind. I'm a big I like trail running. I'm not a fast trail runner, but I'm a happy trail runner. Mm-hmm. Skiing, telemark skiing is a big thing of mine. And then, friends and family is just the super key part of me trying to learn and grow and stay relatively sane.
I mean, I know that contemplative practice, mindfulness, meditation, is something that so many people talk about today. It's got tremendous long-term benefits. So you can, when you really make a habit out of it, it can be tremendous for you. I went to my first meditation program in 2005, also in Boulder at Shambhala. So this is after I'd gotten my MBA, and I did my first weekend with them in 2005, and have had a fairly regular meditation practice since probably 2010. So a good long while now, and it's one of these things that it's cumulative. The benefits are cumulative. So it's not like we can go sit in the closet or sit in the corner for half an hour and solve all of our problems. But when you do it over the course of days, weeks, months, years, then you do find it changing. So what does your practice look like, and how do you approach it?
There's this wonderful analogy of the rock and water. Like, you take a gallon of water and dump it on the rock doesn't change. But you take a gallon of water and drip it slowly over weeks and months and years, and the rock changes, right? It forms and shapes. So that to me, I think, is a good analogy of sitting meditation in the rock of one's, personality or ego or whatever you want to say. So for me, it's like the baseline is, at least 15 minutes of sitting every day. And then many times longer. So sometimes like an hour-long practice session, which I do, pretty frequently, a couple times a week. And then, like, actually just after this podcast gets recorded, I'm going into a 4-day retreat. And then I try to do 1 or 2 long retreats a year.
Got it. So it's a foundational part of your of what you do for your resilience and to build yourself up as you need for the journey. Did you ever talk to, or did you ever bring this sort of practice to the rest of the Yesware leadership team? Did you ever talk to your board about it? Like, what were those conversations like? Because this is a big deal for you, obviously, and not everyone is like totally on the bus with this type of thing. How did those conversations play out?
Well, I think the board first, I think some of the people on the board have known me for a long time. So there was a guy named Rich Miner who was at Google Ventures at the time, and he invested in my first startup, and he was actually one of our customers at the speech recognition company. So he knew about all this stuff. So but I introduced bowing practice at the start of our board meetings. So we would all sit around the table, and as a team, just take a second and arrive, put down our phones, be here together, and then we would bow to each other, and then we would start the meeting. For the guys who were not, Brad Feld was also on that board. He's totally fine with bowing. So there were some other people on the board who weren't really sure what this was all about. But, they have to go along with it. They have really no choice in the matter. So they all bowed also, and it was good. We also had a meditation room in the office. We had meditation teachers come in a couple times a week. It was voluntary, so we didn't take attendance. We didn't make people do it, but if they wanted to explore it, they could. We also had body work and Pilates and other kinds of disciplines that are taught there. So it was sort of part of our overall culture was to try to be healthy and a little more mindful on taking care of yourself as you're doing the startup.
Amazing. So let's get back to the timeline. So you were at Yesware up until 2018, and then you brought in a new CEO. What was the process of bringing a CEO? Like, what were the decision factors where you said, "Hey, I'm not the person doing this anymore. We need someone else"? And how did it feel to go through that?
Well, I'm sure you've been through this in your professional life too, but especially as you're growing a business at each stage, you get to some new level, and it could be a new round of financing, or it could be a new level of organizational complexity. But at these different steps, after you take the step function step, then you kind of look around your executive team and you say, who's holding us back? Who's ready for this next step? who's sort of tapped out in a sense, who's grown out of this or who's outgrown this opportunity, or what skills do we need to bring in? Like, not a pleasant part of the job, but a very important part of the job for sure.
Yeah.
And after as we were raising our C round, I was flying around the country and meeting all these investors, and we were big enough that we were talking to a different class of investors in terms of, people looking at businesses over $10 million a year. It was a new group. And, I just remember flying back east one day and looking out the window and just being like, am I the guy holding us back now? Because we hadn't stalled, but our growth had absolutely slowed from 300% a year to 200% a year to 150% a year. Like, we were still growing quickly, but I basically just determined at some point that after 8 years of doing this from zero, I had lost, or I didn't have what it took to get us from, call it 15 million to 50 million. And it was not a pleasant contemplation.
Yeah.
But that was sort of my bet in a sense. And so I talked to the rest of the board about it in the context of the fundraising. And luckily I had hired a fantastic VP of sales, who then became VP of sales and marketing, who then became COO, this guy, Joel. And he was the obvious candidate. And so we, as part of that fundraising, basically, he stepped up as CEO, and I was active in the company for a year or two, and then I just basically joined the board.
And how did it feel to let go like that? How did it feel to go from being the founder and CEO?
Let's be honest. It was tough. I mean, it was better in that Joel was fantastic. The team we had was great. Everybody knew him. This was a choice, not a board directive. But that was like the only good thing about it, honestly. Because, we had these aspirations, and I was basically taking myself out of the game. And so it was very difficult to let go and to kind of turn over the reins in a sense. But, at the end of the day, you're not building a company for yourself. This is not a personal aggrandizement project. This is not something that is for any one person or any one investor. Building a company to serve customers. And in order to serve customers, your company needs to keep growing. You need to grow more people. You need to offer your services to more people. You need to offer more things to your existing customers. And you need to keep them on board with what you're trying to do. And nothing should get in the way of that, And so I felt like I was maybe in the way of it. So I had to make the change.
And like you said, it's better that it come from choice on your side than it come from a directive from someone else, in terms of, certainly the impact to you, but also the impact to the company.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, investors feel the same way, which is like, removing a CEO from a company is a very difficult choice for investors because they don't really know what's going on. And it's very hard for them to take that step. They don't like to take that step. And so I think, even though Joel did not take the company public, I still think it was the right move for the business. I think I was not scaling with the business the way I should have been. And for whatever reason, we really needed a breath of fresh air, and Joel was absolutely that breath.
And so what happened then? How long did it take you to reorient yourself into other activities? What was your energy level like? What were you doing?
I would like to say that I went on a 3-year soul searching, walkabout, but I didn't, and partly driven because I was so frustrated with the situation, and partly driven by I needed to make some money. I got 3 kids, like I can't afford to sit on the beach. They're all at that point. They were all, coming up on high school. So I was thinking about college, thinking about retirement. I got a good salary, Yesware, but my equity was out of my control now. So I kind of went back to work, and it was kind of fun, I got to say, because like suddenly I'm free of all this expectation and stress and team and management and people, and all of the stuff that comes with running a 100-person company is gone. And suddenly I just left with the skills that I learned and the inspiration for creating something. And, so it just sort of came out, you know what I mean? So it didn't take that long. Maybe I think I worked full time at Yesware for maybe 6 months or a year after turning over the reins, just to help Joel transition. And then I took a little month off or 2 months off or something, and then I got right back to work and started Bodeswell.
Well, so that's extraordinary. So you're telling me that you were so glad to be done with the stress of the team and the investors and the all the pressure that's on the CEO and on the leaders' shoulders, and then you basically took a month break and then decided, I'm going to do this all over again. I'm going to jump in and start another company. So what was the motivation behind Bodeswell, and what did that wind up looking like?
Well, you know how it is. It's like, first of all, entrepreneurs are not great at working for other people.
Sure.
The prospect of me going out and getting another VP sales job was like,
not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. The ideas come, you're facing these problems and the ideas come up, and you can sort of push them away as long as you can, or say that's dumb or I'm tired or whatever, but like they keep coming. So for me, I talked about the need to continue to make money to support my family, right? And so I was worried about my kids and college tuitions. I had some money saved, but I didn't think it was enough. Worried about retirement. My dad passed away right around that time, 2019. And so actually there's a picture of him.
Nice.
Today's the day he died, March 15th.
Oh, wow. Goodness.
2019. So I was helping my mom with her finances, and I was getting to know their financial advisor, who I thought was a total sham, just to make me so angry. And I was trying to get our life together, and I was talking to financial advisors. And at some point, I got a plan back from one of these financial advisors, and it was like a 30-page PDF. And I was like, well, that's wrong, and that's wrong, and this assumption is incorrect, blah, blah, blah. Sent all the notes back to them. They were like, okay, we'll be back to you. 2 weeks later, they sent me another 30-page PDF. And I'm like, you're supposed to be the best firm like in the country, and this is the product you're delivering to me, like a PDF? And so it got me kind of pissed off. And it also got me kind of inspired at the same time. You know what I mean? And so I literally just over one Christmas break just started drawing on graph paper, like making the UI that I wanted.
Uh-huh.
And then luckily I ran into this guy named Bernie Bernstein, who's we had a mutual friend, and he was the world-class technical leader. And we had a couple conversations about this exact topic. He's about my age and a little bit older. And he was like, I want to fix that too. And so he stopped his interviews at Google and Facebook and all those companies, and we started the business.
Wow. And then how big did Bodeswell grow before you got acquired by American Express?
We had American Express and one other customer, John Hancock Insurance. We had 6 people, me, Bernie, this guy Avram Skor, Chris Christensen, Matt Sponer, and Scott Williams. And we raised a total of about $3.5 million, about $1.5 million from, small VCs and angels and ourselves. and about 2 million from Amex Ventures. So we might be the smallest acquisition that American Express has ever done.
But because you had raised from Amex Ventures, they were seeing the company, seeing the potential, understanding the story. And then what happened? Did they say, oh, we see where this fits into our broader portfolio? Is that what happened?
I mean, the Amex Ventures came because the product teams saw potential. Amex Ventures wouldn't have invested if the product team, and particularly these two people, Christina Anzalone and Phil Norman, who were in the digital innovation group, but moving towards the consumer banking group at Amex, thought, finally, we can offer financial planning to our 30 million US card members. Like, we can't do that with people, but we can do that with software. And so that was the initial fit. And then we did a pilot with them one summer, which went really well. And so, then we had the difficult conversation about, well, should we sign a commercial deal with you, or should we buy you, or, and so that's always an interesting negotiation. But in the end, I think it was best for everyone. It was certainly best for American Express that they buy us. So they did.
That sounds like a great journey. And that was just what, 2 or 3 years?
That was about 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, and it sounds like a fantastic outcome. And then from there, have you hung up the entrepreneur hat and are now working as a general partner at Grit Capital, or do you have other ideas marinating, or what's behind this current situation?
Oh man, I think we're gonna have to revisit that question in a year.
Right.
But I have joined an incredible early stage investment firm called Grit Capital. Grit is a 5-person partnership with an incredible team of experts helping us to find and fund and partner with the best CEOs and teams in the US. So we are, but I hesitate there just because, like, I'm right in the middle of this. Like, you're the first person I'm really talking with about this.
Cool.
And so I'm just trying to figure out how it's all going to come together. I start full time in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I just came back from a partner meeting in New York. It was fantastic. But honestly, like, the idea of me hanging up the entrepreneurial thing is like, I'm not quite ready to say those words.
And now, so Matthew, if we look back and if we look back at the 3 versions of Matthew, so founder and CEO at WGR when you were much younger, founder and CEO at Yesware, and then executive chairman at Yesware, founder and CEO of Bodeswell. What's different about you in the CEO role in those companies? What did you learn along the way? How is your later career CEO, entrepreneur, founder mentality different than it had been?
I learned a lot of very tactical skills, for one thing. I learned a lot about software product development, working with some incredible people. Cashman Andrus was my first co-founder, technical co-founder, and Bernie Bernstein, my second. And so I learned a lot of concrete things that are just hard to read about in books. You really have to learn on the ground. I feel like my development as a human being, in terms of meditation practice, and in terms of I was married when I started WGR, but newly married to facing challenges on that path, to having twins, to having a third kid, to raising 3 kids, has deeply changed who I am. Like, being a father to me is like such a powerful spiritual path that made me do things and learn things and grow in ways that I never would have done on my own. And so, the combination of like getting better at business and getting and growing as a person, I think are very sort of dovetailed together. They've been very mutually beneficial. So I feel like really for the first time, I'm able to start to give back in a sense, like to contribute back. So for the last couple of years, I've been teaching meditation as well as studying and practicing meditation. And I kind of feel like the role at Grid Capital is not necessarily a teaching role, but a advocacy, support, mentor, guide, sounding board kind of role. And so that's a transition that I'm just really making in my life now. But I feel like, and it's taken a long time, taken decades, but I'm starting to feel like I might be ready for it. So that's a big change.
Yeah, that sounds like a really meaningful change. I want to, as we wrap up here, I want to ask about something you mentioned before, which are the financial pressures that entrepreneurs face. So we all know that entrepreneurs are making asymmetrical bets, like you mentioned before. So we're putting a ton of time and energy into a vision and an idea. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you get paid as you're starting your company. Sometimes you're kind of taking starvation wages and not doing it. So there's a tremendous amount of financial stress in the life of many, many entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What do you see are the biggest mistakes or assumptions that go into how entrepreneurs think about money and wealth, and what could we be doing differently?
I mean, the very first one that pops to mind. So the second one that pops to mind, I'll go first because it's sort of like the pre-start idea. The pre-start thing is like, you've got this idea. You could be in college or you could be 50 years old, 20 years, 30 years into your professional career. But you've got this idea and my God, you can't sleep at night. It's so exciting. It's just, your nights and weekends prototyping and researching all the things. Your family, you need to be prepared mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially to wander in the desert for a year or 2 years of just trying to figure out, is this even a thing? So many people think like, I'm going to go and it's going to just click. Or they think, oh my God, I need to raise outside capital and then I can figure out if this is a thing. Neither of those two paths are, I think, optimum. I think what you need to do is you need to say, okay, I've got 6 months of cash saved up. I can cover my expenses for 6 months. I'm going to dedicate heart and soul, waking and sleeping time to figure out if in this 6 months I can get any traction on this business. And so the second thing, chronologically, but the first thing that entrepreneurs do in this case is they go too long.
Go too long.
They go too long. They set these milestones for themselves or they don't. And then they just let it dribble along. They don't make the hard decision to cut loss and shut it down. You need to be kind of clear with yourself that like you're looking for feedback. And if you're not getting real feedback, like if you're not getting customers signing on the dotted line, then you might just be wasting your time. And again, time is the only thing that we have. So you really don't want to waste your time. And if you're a professional with opportunity costs or responsibilities like family, so people that string along their entrepreneurial ideas for too long because they have this idea that like, I'm a CEO now, it feels good to get invited to conferences, I'm a blah, 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 are I think perpetuating an unhelpful myth that is going to probably be a suboptimal, use of their time. And then there's tons of tricks, right? There's tons of like ways to structure your business and ways to structure your equity and ways to negotiate with investors and all those kind of things. That's a much longer conversation. But if you can get those first two things right, then I think you're kind of in a better spot than a lot of people I talk to.
Cool. Fantastic. And then final question here. You've been through this 3 times yourself, and it is the outcome that many people, rightly or wrongly, think is a great outcome as an entrepreneur, which is getting your company acquired. So you get acquired and
great outcome.
It's a great outcome. So you've been through this 3 times, the process of having your company get acquired. What are the steps that an entrepreneur can take to really prepare themselves and their business for that eventuality, for that process?
I think the most general and probably the most generally correct advice is that companies are bought, not sold. In other words, if you start a company with an idea of selling it, it's probably not going to work.
Okay.
You need to start an idea with a company with an idea of who are the customers you're going to serve and how are you going to serve them. And if you do that really well, then there's a chance that one of them might buy you. But generally speaking, thinking about selling at the beginning is like thinking about, I'm going to get a great night of sleep tonight. And then you toss and turn because you're thinking about a great night of sleep. It just doesn't work that way, you know?
And so you didn't start your company as thinking we're going to get acquired. You started your company as thinking we're solving a problem in the marketplace. We're trying to acquire customers. We're trying to make our customers execute better in their world or whatever it is that they're trying to do. And we're trying to help people. We do that for long enough, and someone else notices, hey, people are talking about this company, or they're interested, or really could be valuable, and then that happens.
That's why I feel strongly that as soon as you can, entrepreneurs should start paying themselves a salary. You know, they should treat themselves and their team as if they're going to be doing this the rest of their lives, and that has to be sustainable. That has to be, responsible, and that's just reality. Like I mean, if I had a motto, if I had something I'd want to carve on my gravestone, it would be "Get real."
Get real.
Get real. You know, like let's just get real here. Like let's not dance around the issues here. We gotta actually try to see as clearly as we can. We got to get real about what that means. And I think entrepreneurs that start with a high concept of like, here's how the outcome will be in 5 or 10 or 20 years that's not the point. You can have dreams, that's fine. But like, honestly, the most important thing is like what's happening this day, this week, this month, this year, in order to help your customers succeed. And if you do that, and then if you have the guts to ask them to pay for it, then you can have a business and you don't need to sell it. There's a lot of great companies that are never sold, that just people run forever. And sometimes they make absurd amounts of money doing it, and they have great teams and they love their work. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Indeed, there is not. Indeed, there is not. Well, Matthew Bellows, thanks so much for a super enlightening conversation. Congrats on the many steps that you have taken to creating a really storied career. Best of luck in your next adventure as a VC. And thanks so much for joining us here on the Conscious Entrepreneur Podcast.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to say thank you for magnetizing this community, because I think a lot of people want to work with these ideas and want to think about this as a path, and you bringing people together to share ideas and thoughts and support each other is just invaluable. So thank you for that.
Super. Thank you so much, Matthew.